Welcome back, Tribe. Today we're here with special guest Guru Scott McQuaid of Black Triangle Silat. Guru McQuaid, how are you today? Welcome to the show.
Yeah, I'm good. I appreciate you having me on.
Can you please tell the audience a little bit about yourself and your background in the martial arts?
I started my training very young in boxing, and I've always maintained boxing as a part of my training because it's reality based. There's nothing more real than somebody trying to knock you out. So I took that mentality of just trying to weigh off my opponent before he gets me and applied it to pretty much everything I studied then on after. I'd done 2 years of shotgun karate, some jiu-jitsu, another couple of years of Muay Thai, then Wing Chun, before I come across Silat Haramau, or Silat Haramau as it's more generically referred to. After a decade of studies, I opened up my school Black Triangle Silat in 2006, which is my tribe. The name refers to the Dutch colonial period over Indonesia when they outlawed the practice of Silat. So Silat practitioners or Persilats would paint a black triangle on the building to let you know that Silat lessons would be taught there in the evenings. This way they could, continue their training without the Dutch being aware. The triangle obviously refers to the footwork used in Silat, which is based on the points of a triangle. The colour black is merely because they used coal or mud to mark the building with a triangle.
What can you tell us about Silat Harimau? How is it different or similar from other forms of Silat?
Silat Haramau is traditionally regarded as a ground fighting system. The origin of the landscape for this art was marshland, so the style had to be close to the ground, otherwise your feet would sink or slip if you tried using like a orthodox upright approach to fighting. It's in that aspect of low fighting combat, that's what separates this system from other Silat styles, but I suppose the biggest difference would be the mindset. Silat Haramau fighters are not taught to control or restrain their opponent, they're taught to kill because that's how they survive.
People often question the various forms of Silat, often stating that Silat's way of movement is too foreign for Western students. What do you think of this? What insights can you share with us?
I think the movement is only foreign to Westerners because of what the individual has been subjected to. You got to remember we're all subjects of our surroundings, but we can adapt. Just as the world is constantly adapting to new technology, a lot of Silat styles have these movements that can seem, impractical, but it's how they're applied on the battlefield. Everybody has a different pace of learning. It's down to the teacher and the student to find a way of applying the method to learn. But of course, Silat isn't for everybody, and that's okay. Just find the art that works for you.
Few people, even in the martial arts community, know what Harimau is. Can you explain to us where it comes from, how it's practiced, and how it's adapted for today's modern Western students?
Silat Haramau is a jungle warfare system of combat, which was, created by the Minangkabau tribe from West Sumatra in Indonesia. The Minangkabau are mountain people living in a very volatile environment, dense jungles, live volcanoes, wild animals, including, the tiger, which is known as Haramau. So they base their art on the dynamics of the tiger, how it moves and brings down its prey, because they're sharing the same terrain. So this style of Silat has very low postures, lots of ground attacks. Obviously with each generation comes, evolution through society and different ideologies, and different instructors have different focus areas. So when I learned, there were no belts, there was only teacher and student. It was very raw. Very much how it was taught, I imagine, back in the day in Sumatra, because our grandmaster had brought it over to Europe with these teachings. We would do lots of sitting and moving through low kudas, which are stances that condition the legs, and just moving in and out of them, and that would give you the flow and the movement of the art. And we'd done that for about the first year, about 1 year we done that for. We didn't even throw a punch or kick. It was just stances and movement. But yeah, then soon after that, it was full on. We done lots of fighting. It was just fighting, using what you were using these stances and moving in and out of them. And we just done lots of fighting, and it was brutal. We would workshop attacks, moving in and out of them. So we got lots of bruises, fractures, and on occasion bloodshed. Today, the art maintains that kind of hard training regime, but it's much more structured and geared towards set patterns of jurors, which are the forms for like gradings. There's less real fighting involved, but that's not to say that the teachings are any easier or lack any physical combat methods. Just the mentality of instruction has shifted.
Does Harimau have any weapon systems? What can you tell us about it?
Yeah, it does. Naturally, they're jungle fighters, so they have galoks, which are machetes, and parangs, swords, and knives, and all that. But again, unlike most Silat styles that were shaped and formed with the design of a weapon first, Silat Harimau, their focus was the unarmed aspect, and it still is today. The weapons training is somewhat raw and basic compared to its ancestral Silat styles like Chimande, Harimau Barantai, or Kali.
I've often heard from interviewees that there's a very marked difference between self-defense arts, military arts, and tribal arts. What are your thoughts about this?
That's an interesting question. I think in as much as how they're structured, they're different. But again, it comes down to how the instructor applies it. I mean, my instructors all come from some reality-based job where they would use the art. One was a bouncer, so you had that up-close and personal element to your fight game. And the head of our system comes from a military background, so overall we were taught in that hard regiment of repetitive drills. But still with the Menang tribal aspects mixed in with a modern military interpretation. So it was both traditional but practical on the streets. And so I just continue them teachings with additions, but mostly in that fashion because that's how I learn. So if the instructor keeps a sense of realism to their style, then it should hold up. But if they're just getting their students to stand in a line and punch air with on-the-spot techniques and learn set patterns for gradings, then it's going to have some cracks in its foundation, at least in a combat situation.
How have your studies in the martial arts outside of your primary Harimau system contributed to your overall growth as a martial artist?
Well, they've been imperative, really, because although Silat Harimau is the system I used to fight with, I mean, that's what's natural to me. There are parts of the art that have been influenced and sculptured by other styles to strengthen it, particularly in the weapons area. So to fortify that, I'll study in various martial styles and put some techniques or principles and mould that into the Harimau shape. I know there's a lot of martial artists out there that don't like to look outside their dojo, they're purists, and I get it, but I'm all for keeping each style authentic and preserving customs and the overall design of an art. But you got to remember, no martial art comes from just one singular source. There's always traces of other combat styles and influence within your systems. You can only learn from exploring other combat forms. You can never lessen your style.
Guru Scott, you're also a filmmaker, and I would like to know if you could tell us something about your documentary, The Dark Gift.
The Dark Gift documentary was an idea I had in the early part of my career in training in Silat Harimau. I would hear these stories about other practitioners in our system and also folk tales of the Minangkabau warriors from Sumatra. And Silat has never really been any good at documenting its rise and growth within its country of origin. So I thought, as I do work in the film industry, it would be a good idea to document some things and maybe just interview a few people, and that's kind of how I started out. Then after the first 2 years, I realised this was a big project because I'd spent a lot of time in Sumatra researching and shooting footage and training, and I wasn't any closer to a final edit. At times I thought, I probably wouldn't ever get it done, I wouldn't be able to make it. But then, just kept at it, and after 7 long years and lots of plane tickets to various corners of the planet, I finally was able to put it together. The follow-up film, Silat Caramel, The Minangkabau Art of War, was another project that took about 2 years to produce, but I had already said to myself that if I can produce Dark Gift as a historical documentary tracking the art's beginnings, then the second film would be to document the actual fighting movements, and see that. And that was always in my mind. So that's how that come about. And I thought I was done. I wasn't really looking to do any more. Then I was doing some research into Tongkat, which is the stick fighting style in Silat, and I wanted to push and evolve the Haramau Tongkat. And the more I studied and trained with various instructors, both in Silat and other martial styles, and researched, the more I thought this would be a good documentary, to kind of follow somebody on a journey, looking at all these different stick styles. Because if you just look at, something, just one area of combat, like stick fighting, you can see influences from other systems, and it gives you a good idea of that style, because just to look at a martial art in its entirety is too broad. So now I'm just finishing the final edit to this documentary film, which is titled Tongkat, Journey of a Stick Fighter, and this is my third and final installment.
What parting advice can you give us to students who wish to incorporate Harimau into their training system?
Training the basics, all the low stances and moving in and out of them, they're vital to making Harimau Silat work in a fight. Excellence is the mastery of the basics.
As you know, our group is dedicated to the warrior lifestyle. How do you view warriorship? And do you follow any formal path of warriorship or any formal tradition?
Well, behind all warrior codes remains the same idea, to follow the path of the righteous. I think in ancient times life was simpler in terms of, there were less distractions. So these values were clearer to see. But we live in an uncertain world, so for me, I remain vigilant. Not being paranoid, but just being, alert, as warriors of old would be. I live by my family, the sun sets and rises with them, and I consider myself a custodian for Silat Caramel. I try to preserve the art while trying to evolve it and basically spread the message of the art to the next generation. And that's the warrior lifestyle I obtain to.
Well, Guru Scott, that was a wonderful interview. I want to thank you for being with us on the show and sharing so much great information. Before we go, please tell the audience where they can find you on the web and how they can reach out to you for training or to pick up some of your training products.
Everything you need to know about the art, our tribe, classes or DVDs, you can just visit blacktrianglesilat.com. It's all there.
Again, Guru Scott, it's been a pleasure. I want to thank you again for making time out of your busy schedule to be on the show. We've been dealing with some technical difficulties, and your expertise in production has really come through in helping us get this interview and bring it to the audience. Thank you once again.
Anytime. Thank you.